everyone, and welcome to this video series on the attributes of human service organizations. This is part 2, where a particular attribute I'll be going over is the idea of human services as moral work. This comes from Zeke Hasenfeld's text on human services as complex organizations, in particular chapter 2 of this book. Let's first go over what we mean by moral work. So the idea is that the work that human service organizations do anyway, it involves values and beliefs about what is right and wrong, and beliefs about what is correct and incorrect behavior on the part of clients. So social workers in HSOs are accessing very private information and using that information based on these beliefs and values to determine whether a client is eligible for services. So there has to be rules about what can be accessed in terms of private information and for what purposes. But the mere act of assessing this type of eligibility involves making moral judgments about the worth of the clients, their deservingness, right? This idea of whether they are deemed deserving or not, as we discussed in the first video. Well, this depends on moral judgments that social workers and agencies make about the client's personal attributes. And this is all happening in a context of limited resources. So when we have these types of limited resources, we have to make decisions about who to give those resources to. So let me give an example here. One which is not about human service organizations per se, but is just kind of bringing it down to like a more individual level to help you see the types of decisions and the fact that they're based on values that human service organizations have to make. Okay, so let's say you win the lottery, you win $2 million, and you decide you're so lucky you want to give away $1 million of that money. And you have a particular affinity for single parents. For whatever reason, you want to help them. So you put out an ad and you say you have money to give to single parents, and if they want to apply here, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you get lots of applications, and let's say they're based on generally 3 types of families. One type of family involves a mother with her child. Another type of family involves a father with his child. And then the third type involves a mother with more than one child. We could add a fourth, single father with more than one child, but I didn't have room here, so just go with me. So the idea is that here we have to have some sort of decision-making process and what affects that decision. So there's certain criteria that you might come up with, but those criteria are going to be based on your values and moral judgments about the people who have applied. So for example, are you going to make decisions about gender? Do you want to help mothers versus fathers, for example? Do you care about the number of children that they have? Do you care whether they're employed, whether they're low income, etc.? There's all sorts of criteria that you could use to make the decision about who to help. You only have $1 million. You can't help everybody who applied. That's the context of limited resources. But in making these decisions, by using whatever criteria you come up with, you're essentially placing a value on the social worth of these different types of families. And these types of moral judgments and the type of moral work that's done has an effect on clients. As Hasenfeld puts it, the clients absorb the moral meanings of the labels and the workers' responses as a reflection of their own self-identity, which may evoke some sense of personal valuation. In other words, clients internalize the messages, whether they're positive or negative, that are being received, and they come to believe those messages to be true about themselves. or they believe that the messages are true of others in their same or similar circumstances, but not themselves. For example, there's in our current political climate very negative messaging about immigrants, and in particular undocumented immigrants, but immigrants in general. Well, if you have a client who's an immigrant themselves, they may say, I'm not like them because of X, Y, and Z. Right? These are all the ways that I'm not like these immigrants that people are saying all these negative things about. And the reason for that is the fear of the stigma being applied to them. So that's what that latter part of this slide was in terms of either internalizing and believing those messages, or taking a very strict stance and saying, that's not like me, that's other people who the messaging is about. Other effects on clients. Well, judgments lead to different types of services and the quality of services, or they may lead to the types of decisions that are made, because they're based on values, may lead to different services. Or as Hasenfeld puts it, being perceived as deserving may mean the difference between receiving immediate assistance and being shunted through a bureaucratic maze. Another thing to know about human services as moral work is the invisibility of that morality, because we couch our judgments under labels that sound neutral. So we say words like eligibility, diagnosis, prognosis, treatment, which don't necessarily, on just the face of them, look to be based on values and moral judgments. But this isn't always the case. So organizations can resist this idea of morality-based services. And workers can embed their own values in their work based on the values of the social work profession. Okay, so that in a nutshell is what Hasenfeld means by human services as moral work. Next up, we're going to have part 3, which is the characteristic that Hasenfeld calls the primacy of the institutional environment. So make sure to check that out, and as always, I will either see you there or in class. So thank you for watching. Here are the sources of the images, and I hope you all have a wonderful day or evening. Okay, bye.